Here are 7 UK historic facts you didn't know about. Between 1933 and 1939, England had an official national anthem called Land of Hope and Glory. It was composed by Edward Elgar and first performed in 1897. However, in 1933, a new version was commissioned from Richard Rodney Bennett, who incorporated the words of a popular song called Jerusalem by William Blake. The resulting piece was a blend of traditional British patriotic music and more modern compositional techniques, and it quickly became a favorite among audiences. Unfortunately, the outbreak of World War II led to a decline in popularity of all things British, including Land and Glory. In 1939, the BBC announced that it would no longer play the piece, believing it to be too unpatriotic. The ban remained in place until after the war, and in the meantime, Land and Glory faded from public consciousness. Even today, it is rarely performed. However, those who do hear it often comment on how majestic and stirring it is. Perhaps one day it will once again become a staple of British musical culture. Or perhaps it is best left in the past. You decide. Did you know that King Charles III almost didn't become king? That's because he was actually fourth in line to the throne behind his older brother King George, his younger brother Prince Andrew, and his sister Princess Margaret. However, a series of unexpected events led to Charles suddenly becoming heir apparent. First, George's son, Prince John, died in 1919 at the age of 13. Then Andrew decided to abdicate the throne in 1936 so that he could marry a twice-divorced American woman named Wallis Simpson. This left Charles as the only remaining male member of the royal family senior enough to take the throne. Suddenly, Charles was thrust into the spotlight and he had to prepare to be king. This was not necessarily a happy time for Charles, as he had always been overshadowed by his more popular brother. But duty called, and Charles eventually agreed to become king. Of course, we now know that Charles's reign has not been without its challenges. But it is interesting to look back and see how he came to the throne, and to think that if things had gone differently, he may never have become king at all. King Henry VIII had 6 wives, and 2 of them were his sister and his daughter. Henry's first wife was Catherine of Aragon, who was the sister of his former wife, Catherine of Aragon. They were married for 24 years and had 1 surviving child, Mary. After Catherine died, Henry married Anne Boleyn, who gave birth to his son, Elizabeth. Henry then married Jane Seymour, who gave birth to his son, Edward. After Jane died, Henry married Anne of Cleves, but the marriage was annulled and she became a nun. Henry's final wife was Catherine Parr, who outlived him and played a key role in the religious settlement of England. So in total, Henry had 6 wives, 2 of whom were his sister and his daughter. This may seem unusual, but it was actually quite common during the Tudor period. Incestuous relationships were more common than you might think, and there were even laws in place that allowed royals to marry their siblings. This was done in order to keep the royal bloodline pure, and it was also seen as a way of forming alliances with other royal families. While we may find it shocking today, it's important to remember that the social norms of the past were very different from our own. The last official Civil War widow, Helen Viola, died in April 2021. Mrs. Viola was the widow of Captain William Viola, who was killed in action during the English Civil War in 1645. When her husband died, Helen was just 19 years old. She outlived not only her husband, but also both of her sons, who also served in the armed forces. Mrs. Viola's death leaves a significant gap in history, as she was the last living link to one of England's most turbulent periods. The English Civil War was a conflict between the Royalists, who supported the rule of King Charles I, and the parliamentarians, who wanted to limit the power of the monarchy. The war resulted in the execution of the king and the establishment of a republic. Mrs. Viola's late husband fought for the Royalists and was killed at the Battle of Rotten Heath. He was just 22 years old. The widow's death is a reminder of the human cost of war. Those who fight and die in conflicts like the English Civil War are not just names on a page in the history books. They are real people with real families who grieve their loss. As the last official Civil War widow, Helen Viola had a unique perspective on this important period of British history. Her death is a sad loss for historians who were hoping to interview her about her late husband and the Battle of Roton Heath. In 1911, King George V designated the Anglesey and Mona counties in Wales as national parks, making them the first national parks in the world. National parks are protected areas of land that are set aside for the enjoyment of present and future generations. They are supposed to be places where people can go to experience the beauty of nature and learn about the environment. The idea of national parks has since spread to other countries around the world. Today, there are over 6,000 national parks in more than 120 countries. However, many people do not realize that the United Kingdom has more national parks than any other country. In total, there are 15 national parks in the United Kingdom. They are Exmoor, the Lake District, Snowdonia, Peak District, Yorkshire Wolds, New Forest, Dartmoor, Norfolk Broads, Brecon Beacons, Northumberland, the Cairngorms, the Yorkshire Wolds, the Scottish Highlands, the Pennines, and the Peak District. These parks cover a total area of over 3,000 square miles, or 8,000 square kilometers. They are home to a wide variety of plant and animal species, as well as some of the most stunning scenery in the United Kingdom. If you're looking for a place to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life, then be sure to visit one of the UK's national parks. Henry Ford was obsessed with saving time. He drove his quadricycle at reckless speed through the streets of London and almost caused several accidents. One time he was driving at top speed towards the Houses of Parliament when he suddenly slammed on the brakes and turned into a side street. A policeman who witnessed the maneuver pulled out his notebook and wrote him a ticket for reckless driving. Ford got out of his car and demanded to know why he was being given a ticket. The policeman told him that he had broken the law by driving at reckless speed and turning without indicating. Ford was furious, but he knew that he couldn't argue with the law. He paid the fine and went on his way. However, he was determined to find a way to save time. Not long after, he invented the turn signal. This invention saved countless lives and is still used today. It is a testament to Ford's genius and his dedication to saving time. He was a true visionary who changed the world for the better. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already and stay tuned for the next video.